Welcome back to Corporate Fuckery, the show that unpacks the cost of autopilot ambition and what it really takes to redefine success on your own terms. Today's guest, Heather Boneparth, is proof that partnership is the ultimate power move, where you're brave enough to rewrite the rules together. She's the Director of Business and Legal Affairs at Bonafide Wealth in New York City and co-author of Money Together: How to Find Fairness in Your Relationship and Become an Unstoppable Financial Team. Her work, featured in outlets like CNBC, The Skim, HuffPost, and Insider, is redefining what equity looks like inside love, money, and modern partnership. After leaving a high-powered corporate law career to join her husband's firm, Heather started asking bigger questions about ambition, identity, and the invisible economics that shape our relationships. What she discovered is disarmingly simple. You can have everything you want. It just might not look like what you expected. Heather is the kind of powerhouse woman who knows her priorities and isn't afraid to assert them, not just at work, but at home, at the table, and at every decision that defines a life. She's helping couples turn financial tension into teamwork, ambition into alignment, and marriage into something far more radical, a fair one. Let's dive into what it really takes to build wealth without losing yourself, with the woman turning love and money into the most honest conversation of our time. Welcome, Heather Boneparth.
I don't think I'll ever receive an introduction as good as that ever again.
Thanks.
I'm beside myself. I'm so happy to be here.
I just told you, get ready to receive because it's coming, girl. Yeah.
It's amazing. Thank you, Lauren. I am so happy to be here.
I am like stoked. Money and corporate fuckery go hand, in my personal opinion, for so many reasons. And it is kismet that your book is coming out on October 28th, Money Together. We're going to talk about that today. But I just feel like so compelled to talk about so many things in this book. And I know that my listeners are going to just drool over everything that you have to say because they know that a lot of their stories around money, or they're going to, were birthed from a very young age and that they're still playing out in their everyday careers and relationships. And once we get a handle on that in a way that feels like not war or conflict, that life can change and be different.
That's right. That is right. I think you hit the nail on the head. These are stories. The stories we tell ourselves about money matter, and they begin long before you found your partner, and they're not going to change just because you love someone. Okay. These are stories that we learn from a young age. They are embedded in our identity, sometime in our culture, in our lived experiences, in our religion. These are things that we carry on with us into our adult life, into the workforce. They are how we form our workplace identities as well. It's really, really hard to marry all of those beliefs and those value systems with someone else. It's not easy. And it's how you look at someone like me, who was a corporate lawyer for more than a decade, who married a financial expert, someone who's been in the wealth management space for more than 20 years. And even we were getting it wrong. And like, we've known each other for a million years, my husband and I. And even we were getting it wrong. And that was, humbly speaking, like the beginnings of what became Money Together.
I'm glad you're able to write a book about it. I don't think my husband and I are quite to a point where that feels like a liberating experience. But tell us what the tipping point was. Like, let's give the people a little bit around what was the impetus for why Money Together is such a powerful movement.
Well, let's set the stage. If you want to know the personal story behind this, let's set the stage. I was about a decade into my corporate career. So I'm an elder millennial. I graduated law school at the height of the Great Recession. What I thought was going to be a very lucrative legal career that I had a grand direction for was not going to happen. Most of my class was unemployed at graduation. I was one of the lucky few that had a job with benefits that was full-time. It was grossly underpaid. It was not in the area that I thought I was going to practice. I ended up in commercial insurance, which, shocker, was not what I went to law school for. And so, what my husband, what my then boyfriend, eventual husband, and I had figured out was that if I put my head down and work this corporate career, because I ended up, you find a way, right?
Yep.
You find a way.
Yep.
I said, this is fine. It's okay. That we're a team. Everything we do is a team. And it's true. But I would hold down this corporate job and this corporate career track and stable benefits and be the breadwinner for our family for a period of time in our 20s. So my husband could take the risks and launch a firm, launch a career, try and build a platform online because he's kind of this online meme lord himself in the finance space.
Huh?
That's no other way to put it. I mean, he's like a shit poster. Like he is. Yes.
Great.
But so we kind of my stability gave him the opportunity to take the risks and to go and build and to kind of build his dreams. And we've always shared that collective ambition. The my win is your win. I'm gonna do this so that you can do that. That's all well and good, okay? For a while, you know, until we had kids.
I was gonna say, it's great when you're dinks. It sucks when you have responsibilities of paying whatever bill is related to rearing a child.
Until you have kids, right?
Yeah.
And that was right around the time that I would say that my career plateaued. And I think a lot of women experience that. There are ladders with broken rungs that just so coincidentally seem to coincide with the years that women are having children. And you don't have to make a stretch to understand why. I felt, as I call it, the Bermuda Triangle of my career. I was lost in it for several years in my early 30s when my children were young. And it just so happened to be right around the same time that my husband, all the sacrifices and all the risks we took, everything was paying off. So suddenly I went from being the breadwinner in our household to an egalitarian household to suddenly he's earning 3 times my salary. And
That feels
chocolate,
good. That
right?
feels good. Yeah,
You
as
know,
a high achieving woman, uh-huh.
it feels good from a team standpoint of saying, hey, things are going really well for us as a unit. But how are things really going for me when I've given so much of my time to also help build his career, help him as his business advisor, like moonlighting with my second job as Doug's business consultant all these years, content, business formation, and all these things in marketing. And it just so happened to be the same time that COVID hit. And I had an 11-month-old and a 4-year-old and a husband making 3 times my salary. And suddenly what happens is I realized I was starting to tell myself stories about what I deserved and whose time was worth more. And those were not helpful stories that I was telling myself. I was undervaluing. Actually, one of the experts said in the book that I was complicit in my own oppression because
Ouch.
I was because at that time it was like everyone was home. We were both working from home. We had 2 small children in the high touch phase of life.
Yes.
And someone had to handle all of the burdens and responsibilities of the household. It was everything from the physical labor to the emotional labor to, as I like to say it, there was this extra layer of invisible strain and emotional output around COVID and the decision fatigue that came with every little decision for having small children during that time.
Yes.
Even when they went back to school, like nobody got it. I was like, every time they go to school is a chance they're going to be quarantined for 2 weeks. It was insane when you look back.
It
Anyway,
it wa
I
I
digress.
still can't believe that we lived through that, like, personally, I might not ever believe that we lived through it.
I still have for sure. But right around this time, it went on for a while like that. And what was happening was I was losing myself in our arrangement. I was losing myself not only in my role as a mother, which is a beautiful thing to find your identity as a mother, but I didn't have a normal opportunity to do that during COVID. And with that, I was also just losing myself behind my husband. And so much of that had to do with the stories that I was telling myself around time and money and value and power in our relationship. And what was building was resentment for the thing I had helped my husband build. Like we built it together. And it's not like he was ever the guy to take all the credit. Anyone knows, like there was a podcast he went on years ago, and the woman said, I've never heard a man talk so much about how his wife was responsible for the reason that he's sitting here. He's a great guy, my husband. But still, it's all lip service at a certain point when I wasn't given the opportunity to pursue the things that I wanted to pursue. We reached a point where it felt like, what about me? And I was starting to grow incredibly resentful of his opportunities, of his platform, of his chances to take risks. And I was taking it out on everyone that I love, not just
Yeah.
him, my children, my family, my friends. And we just felt like something had to give. And so this was about several years into COVID. And I, probably not in the most eloquent or polite or loving way, said something in this relationship, in this family, has to change. And I put my foot down, and one thing led to the next, and I was the director of business and legal affairs for
All of a sudden,
and writing a book about my messed up relationship with money to help other people through their messed up relationships with money and their family and their career, because it is all inextricably linked, especially for women.
and why do you think that is? What's your opinion?
I think that money and care are inextricably linked.
Mm.
I think that we see women stepping away or downshifting from the workforce in a way where it feels sometimes like we don't know whether we made the decision or whether the decision was made for us. We find ourselves questioning what role we have, both in society, in the workforce, and at home. And sometimes we don't even know, like I said, who made these decisions. And I
Yeah.
think one of the most damaging things that many of us believe, and I'm guilty of it too, was that systemic institutional failures were failures of my own. And that is simply not true. So that is how I think we find ourselves in this position where money, care, income, as it relates to power and self worth, result in women easily losing themselves in certain arrangements unless they make active efforts to assert their place and reclaim their time. It's just, it is such a slippery slope because if it happened to me, this like incredibly conscious, ambitious, driven career woman, then I think it could happen to anyone.
Yeah. I couldn't agree with you more. And, around the same time, 2019 is when I blew up my corporate career after a Me Too incident at work with our chief information and security officer at the time that retaliated, in my opinion, against me for the better part of a year. And my brain had me convinced that I only had two options. I could stay and go find another job because my leader at the time had asked me to go find another part of the organization to work in, or I could blow everything up without a plan. And so I opted for door number 2, and I had always felt like I was powerful in making like, I could go make money. If I could do anything, I could go figure out how to make money in the corporate space. I had a job change every 18 months early on in my career. I reinvented my career multiple times through multiple industries. My husband, when he found out I was going into technology as a technologist, he was like, "Honey, that's so cute. But, like, you're gonna get chewed up and spit out." And here I was 18 months later getting promoted and then promoted, and I mean, it was wild. And so when I did that, I was like, "Oh, shit. Like, I just shit the bed of life right here. Like, what did I do? Because I have no money." And we were spending, like, $1,500 more a month than he was bringing home, and I didn't have fun employment or anything like that to rely on. So I found myself in, like, the perfect money storm, right? All of my money stories came up, all of my identity around the powerhouse part of what am I gonna do? How am I gonna figure this out? And truly, I believe it's a lot of what women who feel like their life is a house of cards really struggle with, right? They're like, I'm not giving up this lifestyle. Like, you will have to rip it out of my cold, dead hands to get me to walk away from this toxic situation that is keeping my lifestyle intact.
Completely agree. It is so easy to tether your self-worth to your income because that is the message in our society. We are taught to optimize, we are taught for growth, fear growth, that, by the way, does not exist.
Oh, it
And
doesn't.
if you ask me, even for the boomer generation, even that was a bit of a ruse, as they all saw after 20, 30 years and expecting a retirement party and a watch. And we're at the end of it. That didn't work out for many of them either. But I think even more so for the younger generations aging into what's supposed to feel like the peak earning years of our careers. Like, I think we're realizing that these narratives that, well, if you just do this to that, that's not really how you reach the pinnacle of your potential and your success. You've got to rewrite those rules for yourself. You've got to trust what's going on in here and not necessarily the lockstep version. I cannot tell you, Lauren, how many supervisors, managers, deputies I've ever worked under who like told me to be patient or that, and they have used the word ambitious against me
Yes.
with such vitriol. They didn't mean it in a nice way. They meant it in a way that I was allegedly subversive to them.
Mhm.
And I knew when I started to feel that, which began in the years that I had grown out of that, go from being like the baby, especially as like a woman. I think you go from being like the young lady
Yeah.
where they treat you like that. I
Yeah.
felt that so many times in my career when nobody had a problem with me then.
I was told, like, I just looked too young or I didn't have enough refinement or I couldn't hang in this conversation, whatever it was, and I was like, what do you
Right.
mean? What are you talking about?" Or my favorite also was that I was intimidating and that I need to be aware that I can come off as kind of intimidating, and I'm like, "That actually has nothing to do with me." But most powerhouse women, like, take that and that means there's something wrong with me if I'm intimidating. Like, what do you mean?
I remember how hard I tried. My first job that I ever worked was at like a mid-sized law firm. It was basically like all men. There were like 4 women at the whole firm. My whole team were these men. And they were like the broiest of bros. And like I was a paradox to them. I drank brown liquor and I watched college football. And I could have and I was, by the way, really good at my job. And it was okay for a minute. It was okay until I started getting some of their work.
Yeah.
Until
Well, it wasn't.
it was okay until it wasn't. I think so. And we start to try and say to ourselves, who do I have to shrink myself to be a version of me that will be tolerated?
Yeah,
And
I don't even think we think, how do I shrink myself?" I just think we automatically try and I used to call it Gumby when I was in corporate life. Like, I would contort myself into whatever Gumby version of myself I needed to be for the audience that I was with so that I could be perceived as the successful powerhouse woman that could get whatever done needed to be done.
I think I would have really liked working with you.
Mm. It was fun. I used to be a real fun coworker. My last job, maybe not so much. I recognize I maybe wasn't giving it 100% in the same way. Like, I didn't have that same level of drive, so it wasn't quite as seductively fun.
And you know what? That's very interesting because my last corporate job was it was a difficult time. Like I had ended up back. This was my second stint at a corporate job in a GC's office that I had once worked for the company before and I had left and it was a whole thing that I can't talk about. But I came back and it was this soft landing because my former mentor had invited me back and now I was on her team and I had not previously been on her team. And it created this interesting dynamic where I was really grateful, but I was, like, supposed to be really grateful, and that where does the gratitude and the me just being here and still, "Hey, I still have opinions, and I still have drive, and there's still things that I wanna do, and there's still things I believe that I deserve." Yes, I'm grateful, and I found myself during those years, during the COVID years where I was working at that job, working from home, it was a really, really tough time because I was really at a loss for where I belonged in this mental space of having gratitude to have a job after what had happened in my previous job and ending up back there. Having a full-time job during COVID because a lot of people were losing their jobs. And the fact that I was being told that I was like allowed to work from home and they knew that my children were around and whatever. And yeah, they did. They objectively treated me very well. But I say this and I look back and I think about this a lot, like that I think a lot of women mistake being tolerated for being supported. And there is a difference. And no, this may not ever rise to the issue of saying some of the stuff that we've talked about before, but it changes the message that you tell yourself about where you belong, where your aspirations should be. It really can be damaging to your spirit, to your drive, to what you believe you deserve, and to think that what happens at work doesn't impact what you tell yourself at home. They're one and
Yeah.
the same. They're one and the same in the same way equity in the world begins at home and vice versa. So, yeah, that is just how it's all connected.
I completely agree with you. That's why working in a culture that is so supportive of your ass or people working with people, maybe not even a full culture, but having a manager that or a leader that is supporting you. And I always say it that way because at Nordstrom we had the inverted pyramid, right? So it's servant leadership all the way up. Like, we supported from the bottom of the pyramid the employees on the floor. How do we enable them to work better and all the way down? And I've always been into servant leadership, but we don't stop long enough to think about even what some of those narratives are, similar to your money conversation around what we're walking into these corporate environments thinking about how they're impacting even how we're making our next move. Like, what is our next move? What do we decide to do? How much money do we think is possible for us? And I'm sure you can relate of not getting the promotion, not being seen, passed up, not getting the pay that matches, like all the things as powerhouse women and the ones listening right now. Oh, yeah, I've totally done that. And I still harbor resentment for Joe in accounting who couldn't be bothered to give me 5% or whatever it is 4 years ago.
I think one of the best things that I ever started to do, and I know you did not just ask me for a tip, but I
No,
think
tip, please tip.
I
Yes, we're here.
I have always kept receipts. I don't just mean of
Oh,
I keep receipts of my wins, the little ones and the big ones. I would keep receipts of unique things that other people were not measuring because when you're in an in-house legal role, sometimes a win doesn't look like you made the company money. A win looks like you noticed a pattern in something that could present operational risk for the company and you flagged it. And like I wrote every single one of those things down. So it was everything from a little thing, and then I would quantify those little things to those bigger umbrella things that really I wanted people to see. This is something unique to my brain. This wasn't just me picking things up and putting them down and optimizing and doing what I'm told. I discovered this thing and I own this thing, and this made the company better because Heather, was here.
mm,
And every year I kept that running list and I took it with me wherever I went. It wasn't specific to one organization. I kept it because it helped me get that next job. I had specific instances to draw upon when I was applying to new jobs and I could say, hey, I did XYZ at this past job. And by the way, my salary, I expect more than that here because you're saying I'm going to be doing this here. I did at least this here. This is the floor. We have to bring it up from here.
100%. And I think what's wild about this day and age is, and it seems like we've had the same career season where early on in the career, we were being compensated at a certain level, and you reach the pinnacle at some point where the delta doesn't change that much.
Right.
And that's disappointing, first of all. But second of all, that also feels like it is supposed to mean something about you, right? So those 3%, 5%, and unless you're going to make a job change, like you're really not going to make that much more. And for people listening, trying to decide about what is best for them based on the advice that you just gave, what would you recommend about how people reconcile their value against what they bring to the table?
I think there is a point, and this is not like salary negotiations aside, because I want you to go get that bread. I want you to fight for as much as you can. I want it to be fair. I want you to be paid according to what you should be, not just what your gender is being paid.
We could have a whole episode on just gender payment.
But I think it's really, I want to bring up this other point, if you don't mind.
Yeah, go for it.
I think that one of the most damaging thoughts for me was that, first of all, my husband is an entrepreneur. There is no ceiling on
Yes.
how much he can earn. We just can earn. I mean, granted, there's no floor either, and that's what makes it so volatile, right? And that's where the risk comes in when we talk about things like capacity for risk and appetite for risk. It was important to bring it back to couples and families, is that you striving for what's going to be the best for your family may not necessarily only mean that you need to keep earning more and more and more up. Because there's a moment where my salary, the way that I provided for our family, and I talk about this in the book a lot about how caregiving is providing too, and how providing and the value that you provide is not limited to the dollar amount on your paycheck. Because what I provided for my family, even though I was reaching a career plateau from a salary band standpoint within the structure of like the corporation I was in, what I was providing was the hedge against the risks that he was taking. And
Yes.
I was providing the stability for my family and the corporate benefits. But I think that's the point, right? When we look at our ambition and we look at what is enough for us, I strongly encourage you, even though even two things can be true. We're saying these things, they can coexist at once. We should strive for every dollar that we deserve, but we should detach our self-worth from whatever that number is, because the value that you provide to your family and contribute to your community and the people that you love is not affixed to that salary.
Amen. I'm going to just let people let that sink for a second because
Oh,
it's like sermon truly, because so many people are like, I have to keep going. And yet, if we bring this all the way back to the money together and fairness and what you can have everything you want in life, but you're going to have to spend a hot second figuring out what that is and trust that it's not going to look like what you think it looks like. We
100%.
have people addicted, and I was one of those, addicted to a lifestyle, addicted to a sense of dollars in my bank account, addicted to vacations and houses and cars and jewelry, whatever it is. And they're not actually willing to look at what the information is, the data. And so, how do you bring them, as my money expert here today, tell my powerhouse woman who I literally had a multiple six-figure exec that I helped clear out some pressure in her body with some of my subconscious reprogramming this week. She's like, Lauren, I can't even look at my finances. I can't even do it. I've been told over and over that I need to find where my money is so that I can make an exit plan for my corporate job and go all in my business, which just earned its first six figures. And I cannot get myself to do it. It feels like nothing but stress and pressure.
It's really hard to reprogram yourself, but you got to start from the ground up. First, you need to know where everything is,
You do.
and you need to have access. Access, especially in a relationship, that's like a big thing. Access, which means you know all the passwords, you have all the apps on your phone. Make it easy. It's easier than ever to gain access because we all have everything on our phones. It's not like you need to go find the checkbook at the bottom of your sock drawer anymore. You can make it up.
I wrote a check for the first time in 5 years the
I
other day,
know,
and I was like,
right.
damn, this is odd.
No, but it's so true, and there's better banking apps than ever that and budgeting apps that make your life incredibly easy. But when it comes to what you said about lifestyle, I think you have to ask yourself this question too. What is it that you are gaining out of the lifestyle? What does that represent to you? And why does it represent that to you? So we wrote a chapter about never enough, the concept of never having enough. There was an amazing book called Money Zen by Manisha Thakur that was all about the cult of never enough, feeling like not just your things, your material things, your vacation, your homes are never enough, but your accolades at work, getting that pat on the head, feeling like the constant striving is never enough. It's not a sustainable way to live because it comes with a lot of really bad feelings like envy, jealousy. Shame is a big one. When one of the financial therapists that I interviewed for this book said the word shame to me for the first time, and that he basically accused me of carrying shame with regard to not only my student loan debt from law school, but just the way that my career had gone. When I tell you that I felt the words in my entire body, like it went down my spine when he said, "You are ashamed of the way that your life turned out when it comes to your career." And I felt it. But then I would use like, to me, like I always wanted to carry that nice handbag because it felt like a statement of my success. It felt like, screw you, screw you. Despite the odds, I objectively have these things that make me appear to other people that I've got my shit together.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of that. And it really was for I think a lot of it was for other people. Yeah, look, I still like nice things. Look, don't get me wrong. I love nice things. I love to shop, whatever. And I like to go on vacation, fine. But who I was doing it for is really the question. And what we do and the work that Douglas does with the clients of the firm too, and what we saw with so many couples, I mean, oh my God, I spent more than a year interviewing dozens and dozens of couples, like at length, like several hours each,
Wow.
talking to them about all sorts of issues with their money and their stories of growing up and what their pain points are today. And we asked every single couple whether they had enough. And the answers were incredibly profound and eye-opening. And they gave me a lot of perspective. And I think that perspective is something that a lot of us lack today. And it's not our fault. It's the fact that we live in a global village because we carry it in our hand every day. We have opportunities for comparison, and not just that, but we have algorithms that they don't just provide us with access to different lifestyles and ambitions and these growth hack people and all these success stories. But they almost normalize them to the point where you begin to feel like you not only deserve them, but if you don't have them, that you are doing something wrong for not having them. And it's insidious. It is not just what we experience IRL with the people around us. It is truly what we are consuming in our diet of media and content every single day that tells us that we need all of these things in order to prove that we've made some objective level of success. But the problem is that it really, like when you're defining your life by those things, it may never feel like enough. And unfortunately, as we show in the book and as we've seen and as I've learned, that those things may feel really important in the moment, but something could change in your life in an instant. And you can realize that none of it really mattered at all. That's
Yes.
really powerful stuff.
Yes. And let's just be real, a little realer for a second. You ain't taking it with you. And you ain't taking that persona of carrying the handbag with you.
You are,
So
you are not.
this conversation is chef's kiss good. It's so needed because I would have never guessed, even in my own right, if we were sitting here 10 years ago and I was little miss have my shit together on the outside, buying the nice handbags, having 30 pairs of designer shoes because I worked in luxury retail and that's what we did. I would not have admitted to you that I had credit card debt. I would not have admitted to you that savings was hard. I would not have admitted to you that I hadn't had a conversation about 401k or, that I had no idea what a good financial plan was for me or my family going forward. And I know there are women listening and probably men too that are like, I am scared shitless to have this conversation, to open the door on what it looks like to be financially, I'm just going to say free, because that really is what I believe Money Together is intended to give you the gift of, is like just having a different relationship that sets all of those stories free so that you can actually have a conversation that makes sense. And so how would you tell them to get started?
With our book, Money Together. No, no, but I'm not even kidding. I think no, but there's a reason that we wrote this book because Doug has been a financial advisor. My co-author and my husband has been a financial advisor for 20 years. He sits across the table from couples all the time that see a version of life that they want to see, not the reality of the financial situation in front of them. And I think that a lot of people find themselves having the wrong conversations around money. And the right conversations around money begin with empathy, they begin with curiosity, they remove judgment, and they begin with your past. That's why we begin the book with talking about your past, because I think we have to get to the root of some of these money scripts, these beliefs that we've embedded in so deep into our identity that they're coming out in the actions and the financial decisions we're making now as adults, right? And you don't need to begin with a spreadsheet. I think that's like my big point, especially for women, right? Who are repulsed at the thought of digging into this because they say, I don't want to even know. I don't want to know. I don't want to know what I've done. You are not the first. There are so many women who feel this way that would not admit, similar to what you said. Yeah, I carry a rotating rounds of consumer debt over the years when I've gotten myself in a hole for things that I've wanted. And they feel a lot of shame around that. And I would say the way to break these patterns is to break it down from the very start and to start, and especially if you are in a committed relationship, when you have that support from your partner, that lack of judgment, when you really start to understand what's going on under the hood, then the two of you can start to see how each other operate better and you could start to catch each other before you fall back into old patterns. And when we talk about moving forward, because that's ultimately where we end this book and we look forward and we say, hey, none of us really know what's going to happen tomorrow, but we should plan for a future that we're excited for,
Yeah.
that have things that we look forward to, positive financial goals that are so good and so aligned with our values that they are worth us changing our behavior today for, and not just getting caught in this cycle of like self-soothing spending and other things that we've done before because we're so aligned. I'll give you a great example from our own life. We were going to move. This is our starter home. Starter home. It's funny, millennials and their starter homes. We become their forever home because of the housing market. But whatever. We moved into this house pre-COVID, 2016. It was never meant to be the house that we stayed in forever. There's a lot wrong with it. Then during COVID, everything happened in our relationship, the money and finances and family and everything like that, and the housing market, all this stuff. And we had a decision to make. If I had left corporate law, find some other job in corporate law, stable W-2 salary, 6 figures, the whole deal, we would no longer get to move, right? And we were starting to look at homes. We had a realtor, the whole deal. But if I joined the firm, I could live out this dream of mine. I've always been a writer, and it's always been my dream to get back to writing and journalism and write a book that could really help people.
You are a fabulous writer, by the way. Like, truly, I've probably read half the book, and the way that you write is so real.
Thank you.
Sidebar, but truly, the style is phenomenal.
I really appreciate that because I don't feel like writing is something that I choose to do. It's something I like have to do. That's like
Oh,
how I
okay.
feel about it. But it's innate. It's in my bones. But we had a choice. And that choice meant though that we couldn't move into the house. Yeah, we told the realtor we're not looking at homes anymore. And yeah, there's always times where and we're still in that house today. And there's times where I'm like, man, this kitchen's freaking annoying. I want to host a holiday dinner. I want to, but it really like they're such shallow passing thoughts that just move in one ear and out the other because we are so aligned. I get to do this. We made a conscious choice to reprioritize our goals and allow me to shoot for the fences with this dream that I've always had to build my own career, write this book, start helping women and helping couples reach greater equity in their life and their relationships because it's going to help women out in the world. This was my dream, and it was worth not moving into a bigger house right now. Of course, it was worth it, right? And so eventually you start to believe it, right? And so when we talk about how we move out of old patterns, I think aligning on your goals and your priorities that's how you do it. That's how you do it.
This last January, because we had finally, about a year ago, started having money conversations, and it wasn't even like safe. So I come from a lot of financial insecurity. My father, who recently passed away and is part of the impetus of this podcast, if you listen to episode 1 of season 1, he was horrible with money. We ended up owing the IRS $500,000. I'm not even going to claim that. He owed the IRS $500,000 in like 1992, which in today's terms would be a lot more than that. And I mean, just the scarcity mindset, and we can't talk about this, and this is dirty. You know, we had liens on our house went to auction, so many things, Heather. We could be here all day. I could tell you so
We
many
could
things.
do this all day. Oh my goodness. But I can't even imagine for you as a child, probably feeling some sense of responsibility as a child, just because we want to make things right when we see and feel chaos around us. And that I experienced some, I was parentified as a child.
Yeah.
So
Oh, oldest daughter? Are you also?
I'm an only child.
Oh, yes, I remember that out of the book. Yes. I have an only child, and I can see, because my husband is also the oldest, like it has got to be the pits to be the only child from 2 oldest children. But it's funny, I feel compelled to share, like, even what I had to heal as you said that. Just last week, I was doing some practice work with this subconscious reprogramming change work that I do, which helps you rewrite literally in real time using conversation techniques like we have here and your subconscious mind to let go of some of these. And I have this memory where I'm sitting in my mom's 1988 minivan, Chrysler minivan with red with wood panels,
Oh,
and
yeah.
I'm watching one of my parents withdraw my, at that time, life savings, which was probably about $1,200, that I'm just confused as all fuck. I'm like, what do you say as an 11-year-old in that situation? You say nothing, Jon Snow, because you don't know what to do. You don't know what's going on. And yeah, of course I wanted to make it better.
And how powerful that to this day you remember that story.
Oh, I can see it. And because there is so much trauma in my past, like there's a lot of shit I can't see. But what I was able to see in the work that I do, and someone gave me the gift of helping me move through, and that's the work, that's why I do the work that I do, is that I was holding on a responsibility to that memory that I had done something or I had contributed in a way that had caused that financial scarcity or that financial issue. It had nothing to do with me. In fact, it had nothing to do with my own mother. My mom had no idea that this was my dad had all of this debt. Could you imagine coming home and Douglas being like, "So let's sit down and talk about it." I like, as a wife, I would be like, "What the what?
You know
Excuse me,
what?
we're getting divorced right now."
You know what? It happens.
Yeah,
And I've spoken to couples in the book where it still happens today. And
it's
and the reason people stay for all sorts of reasons. And this is no judgment
judgment.
on any
Yeah,
particular situation, but I think it's just so complex. But the point being, these things that happen are so powerful that you held on to feelings from that and you infuse those feelings in your adult relationship with money. And I air myself out first in the book. You will get my full life story.
yeah.
Or you
I
already have
got some of it, but
you're gonna
I
get my
just
full life story. My editors were like, "This is not a memoir, Heather." They were like, "We're cutting."
it's just really interesting that has been part so much of my own healing journey, right? Like you talk about it as going back and looking at the stories and understand. And for me, it's like the parts that got ingrained. And it's why, again, I use the tool set that I do is because you never know what is actually in your way. And that's where the subconscious change work comes in. I had no idea that for whatever reason, last week was the week that I needed to be told that it was okay to move past that and that it wasn't my fault. Now, I could have consciously told myself that for probably the last 30 years, and it would have done nothing.
Isn't it so strange how things connect in a it could be in a very, like, unassuming moment. This book did that for me.
Yeah.
I There was a point in the middle of this, probably closer to when I was around 70 or 80% done with the draft, and I said, "I just made sense of my entire life,
I know.
and I
I know.
just made sense of my entire relationship with money."
Yeah.
And, it's incredibly freeing.
It is the ultimate liberation, I would agree with you, and I have had the gift of having that as well, and I know that some of our powerhouse women that are listening and leading and supporting teams and running families and homes and all of that, they're like, "What's the point of all this?" And I think that both of us in our own way are an example that when you get curious and make choices that allow you to be open to that shift, that the possibility of that knowing actually starts coming to fruition.
I agree.
All right, last question because we're officially out of time, but we'll have you back because Heather, I actually want to do a whole season on money. I actually want to do a season on money education, money management. I want to have experts from all over the world. I want to
I mean,
talk
better
about
place
how
than that.
you're going to be episode 1, baby,
Love
because
it. And
I
I've
tot
got people for you. I've got introductions to make.
I would love that because I believe at the end of the day, a lot of us went and signed up for a corporate career and we're out there proving ourselves in these generations because we're like, we can fucking do it. We can do it and we're going to show you we can do it. And we're going to let it cost whatever it needs to cost on our mental, physical, emotional, spiritual, or energetic selves. But we're going to show you that we can do it. And I am on this earth, I believe, to help women rewrite that so that they can find their own semblance of freedom. But my question for you is what do you want all powerhouse women to know out there about money together?
I want them to know that time is the greatest currency we have, and that you can apply that concept in every area of your life. You can apply it at work to protect your time and assert your worth. You can apply it at home to assert your needs. And you can apply it to the people that you love to be sure that you're keeping in perspective what matters most to you.
Amen. My whole body is lit up by that. So, ultimate truth bomb right there at the end. Heather, I adore you. I just met you 57 minutes ago, but I adore you. Thank you for being
Yeah,
here. Thank you for the gift of your time today. And I look forward to having you back on the show.
I had such a lovely time. This was such a wonderful conversation. I am so happy to have joined.
Thank you. What I love most about this conversation is how Heather reframes wealth not as a number, but as a mirror for where we place our time, energy, and worth. Her and Doug's story is a reminder that money isn't just math, it's meaning. It's the story of who we think we have to be and what we're afraid to lose, and who we get to become when we start rewriting our money rules. Because partnership, whether in business, love, or with yourself, isn't about keeping score. It's about staying aligned to what truly matters. So as you go back to your day, ask yourself, where am I still trading time for approval instead of peace? What story about money or success am I finally ready to retire? If this episode sparked something in you, share it with another powerhouse woman who's ready to build wealth without losing herself. And don't forget to check out Heather and Doug's new book, Money Together, out now. Until next time, stay curious, stay powerful, and keep rewriting the rules of what success looks like for you. I'm Lauren DeGolia, your Chief Expansion Officer, and this is Corporate Fuckery.